MCAT 2017 Cram, Critical Analysis and Reasoning Skills, Passage 21, Maternal Psychology. As you view the reading of this passage, you'll notice some highlighted snippets of text. What I want you to do is garner meaning from these specific selections in order to answer the foundations of comprehension, reasoning beyond the text, and reasoning within the text questions that follow. The passage is really manageable, and so are the questions. So good luck, happy studying, happy testing. Paragraph 1. From the very first stage of the postpartum period, infants show various emotional expressions such as crying and smiling, and their caregivers typically respond sensitively and automatically to these expressions. Many studies have investigated maternal physical and mental responses toward infants' emotional expressions. For example, distress, cries of infant evoke physiological responses in mothers, most of which involve accelerated cardiac activity, increased skin conductance meaning that the skin momentarily becomes a better conductor of electricity when either external or internal stimuli occur that are physiologically arousing, and a higher rate of respiration. Several researchers have suggested that this physiological arousal caused by infant cries functions as preparation for action. When a mother finds that her infant is crying, her stress response will prompt her to approach, pick up, and attempt to console her infant. Paragraph 2. Given that these stressful responses are a fairly typical feature of parenting, how are such responses modulated, and can they be decreased? Levinson suggests that positive emotions facilitate the process of recovery from physiological arousal provoked by negative emotions. This is called the undoing effect. Indeed, Fredrickson and Levinson show that cardiovascular activity induced by watching a negative film returns to baseline more quickly when followed by watching a cheerful film than after a sad or neutral film. The stimulation of positive emotions associated with the undoing effect may result in the restoration of homeostatic balance. Homeostasis is dependent on the dual operation of both sympathetic and parasympathetic autonomic nervous systems. When a person faces a stressful situation, sympathetic activity becomes dominant, causing an increase in skin conductance and heart rate, which helps prepare the person for an emergency. After the person is released from the stressful situation, parasympathetic activity becomes dominant and sympathetic activity decreases, with an associated reduction in skin conductance and heart rate, which is commonly associated with a person experiencing a relatively quiet, relaxed state. Paragraph 3. In the course of daily child rearing experiences, mothers experience stress reactions to their infant's expression of negative emotion, and subsequent positive emotional expressions of the infants may moderate or ameliorate these stress reactions. Although a number of researchers have suggested that positive infant emotional expressions are important for effective mother-infant interaction, exactly how infant smiling affects maternal physiological states remain unknown. Some functional magnetic resonance imaging (fMRIs) studies have reported that infants' positive emotional expressions activate various maternal brain regions, including those underlying the reward system, motor planning, and inhibition of negative emotion. The activation of these regions is thought to be necessary to initiate positive parenting behaviors. However, these studies emphasize the effects of infants smiling on changes from a calm maternal state. It is possible infant smiling might have stronger recovery effects on physiologically negative stressful states by means of the undoing effect. These studies could therefore have underestimated the positive effects of infant smiling on maternal physiological states. Thus, it is necessary to examine whether and how infant smiling brings about positive recovery effects on mothers' physiologically stressful states, including those states caused by exposure to infants' distress cries. In the present study, we investigated whether the happy smiling of infants attenuate, that is, reduce in magnitude, their mother's physiological responses to their preceding cries. All right, that wasn't so bad. The main purpose of the author's new study in paragraph 3 is best described as showing which of the following: A, the impact of positive infant facial expressions on women with children. B, the impact of positive infant facial expressions on their mothers. C, the impact of negative infant facial expressions on women with children. I'll give you a moment to think. Definitely refer back to the passage if you need to. Okay, so in this Foundations of Comprehension question, you have to understand the central theme and be able to recall specific parts of the passage, such as the thesis, examples, and counterexamples. And then you have to determine their relevance in the context of the central theme, okay? So the passage specifically discusses mothers. That's kind of obvious. And their interactions with their infants. So answer choice B, this is looking like a possibility, rather than women interacting with children in general. So answer choice A and C, it's looking like a no. So B is the answer by default. But additionally, the author is particularly interested in measuring how positive infant facial expressions impact maternal physiology. In paragraph 3, the author writes, quote, "In the present study, we investigated whether the happy smiling of infants attenuates their mother's physiological responses to their preceding cries," which is what answer choice B is saying, okay? Although the author asserts that infants' expressions of negative emotion will cause mothers to experience stress reactions, this effect is assumed and it's not the main question being studied. Rather, it's presented as a potential problem for which the positive effects of infant expressions examined in the study may be a solution. All right? Okay. In the passage, the author illustrates the undoing effect with studies that measured responses to A, electrical stimulation, B, music, C, lighting, or D, movies. I'll give you a moment to think. Again, for this Foundations of Comprehension question, you have to recall specific parts of the passage. such as examples given, and then you have to understand their relevance, okay? So obviously the answer is going to be D, movies. In paragraph 2, the author cites a study by Fredrickson and Levinson showing that, quote, cardiovascular activity induced by watching a negative film returns to baseline more quickly when followed by watching a cheerful film rather than a sad or neutral film, okay? And no studies using electrical stimulation, music, or lighting are mentioned. All right? Okay. According to the passage, homeostasis is achieved more quickly after physiological arousal provoked by negative emotions when followed by A, a positive emotion, B, a difficult experience, C, neutral thoughts, or D, minimizing sensory stimulation. Press pause if you need to, and I'll give you a moment to think. All right, so you should have arrived at an answer by now. Okay, so I think the answer is obvious to most people. Basically, what's going on here? This is the Foundations of Comprehension question, and you have to basically recall specific parts of the passage, such as the thesis and examples offered, okay? And again, you have to understand their relevance within the context of the central theme. So paragraph 2 describes a study by Fredrickson and Levinson that showed that cardiovascular activity induced by a negative emotional experience, in this case it was watching a negative film, returns to baseline more quickly when followed by a positive emotional experience, such as watching a cheerful film. So it's looking like the correct answer is going to be answer choice A. There's no mention of the role of difficult experiences, neutral thoughts, or minimizing sensory stimulation in facilitating recovery, okay? So these aren't even mentioned. The only thing mentioned is answer choice A, a positive emotion. All right? Okay. The undoing effect would predict which of the following about an individual exposed to pleasant music after seeing disturbing pictures. Is it A, relief from stress with decreased heart rate and decreased skin conductance? Is it B, relief from stress with decreased heart rate and increased skin conductance? Or is it C, if they see the picture again, they will no longer feel that they are disturbing? I'll give you a moment to think and definitely press pause if you need to. All right. Okay, so this reasoning beyond the text question wants you to apply the ideas expressed in the passage. I think it's in the Levinson and Fredrickson study to the new situations, specifically the new situation in the question stem, okay? So in paragraph 2, the passage describes this undoing effect as being when positive emotions facilitate the process of recovery from physiological arousal provoked by negative emotions. Paragraph 2 explains that relief from stress is measured by both a decrease in heart rate and also by a decrease in skin conductance. So it's looking like answer choice A is correct, okay? This is incorrect, not increased skin conductance. The opposite is true. So the undoing effect basically refers to counteracting negative reactions after they occur, not preventing them or changing how people initially react. to stimuli, okay? So we're not trying to change people's natural reaction. We're just trying to ameliorate the situation. So the correct answer choice is answer choice A, relief from stress with decreased heart rate and decreased skin conductance. Assume that a sample of mothers is assigned randomly to one of two groups. The average nervous system levels, both sympathetic and parasympathetic, are the same for the groups at the start of the experiment. In both groups, each mother observes a video showing her own infant's distress cry. Each mother in group A is then shown a video of her infant smiling happily, while each mother in group B is shown a video of her infant with a neutral expression. The undoing effect would predict that after watching the video of the infant smiling happily, mothers in group A would have 1. Decreased sympathetic nervous system activity relative to themselves after watching the crying infant video, but before the smiling infant video. 2. Increase heart rate and increase skin conductance relative to the mothers in group B. Or 3. Increase parasympathetic nervous system activity relative to the mothers in group B. So is it answer choice A, 1 only? Is it answer choice B, 3 only? Is it answer choice C, 1 and 2 only? Or is it answer choice D, 1, 2, and 3? I'll give you a moment to think. This is definitely easier than it looks. So press pause if you need to. All right. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. Obviously, it's a reasoning beyond the text question where you have to apply the ideas in the passage, specifically the undoing effect to the situation. Okay, so paragraph 2 states that when a person is stressed, sympathetic activity becomes dominant. Okay, and when a person is experiencing relief from stress, parasympathetic activity becomes dominant. So hopefully you are able to go back to the passage and see that if you didn't already know it, this is actually standalone knowledge, biology knowledge that you could have benefited from knowing ahead of time. Additionally, sympathetic activity causes an increase in skin conductance and heart rate, and while parasympathetic activity causes a reduction, okay, in skin conductance and heart rate. The undoing effect would predict that watching the video of the infant smiling happily would not only cause the mother's parasympathetic activity to increase and sympathetic activity to decrease, but also cause it to occur more rapidly than the moms exposed to a neutral video. Thus, we would expect that the mothers in group A experience decreased sympathetic nervous system activity relative to themselves and increase parasympathetic nervous system activity relative to the moms that are up in group B. So yeah, it seems like the correct answer choice is answer choice B, 3 only. All right. Okay. Which of the following assumptions about maternal emotional response is made by the author? Is it A, functional magnetic resonance imaging is an inadequate way to measure maternal stress? Is it B, physiological responses measured in mothers directly correlate with the intensity of their stress? Is it C, compared to men, women experience more physiological changes in response to distress? infants. So which one is it? I'll give you a moment to think. Did I break this down into D and C? It's actually just C1. Oh well. All right, hopefully by now you were able to press pause and come up with an answer. Okay, so in this reasoning within the text question, you have to recall and think about the evidence the author uses to support a key claim, okay? The author never claims that fMRIs or are an inadequate measure of maternal stress, so this is out. The passage never makes any comparison between males and females, and also it doesn't assume that all mothers respond to their infant's cry. Rather, it wants to explore a mother's relative response to her infant's facial expressions. Okay, so the author assumes that heart rate and skin conduction are directly correlated with a mother's emotional response. So it's looking like the correct answer choice is answer choice B. Physiological responses measured in mothers directly correlate with the intensity of their stress. All right. Okay, that's that.